In the heart of capitalism, the Mafia is also a capitalist organization. Like the big banking corporations, the crime families lend out money to get rich. From its earliest days in America's Little Italies, the Mafia has been a money-lending institution. Immigrants to the New World have always needed money to get started. The Mafia is ready to lend, but only at an extortionate price. The money it lends is criminal money, the billion-dollar profits of its nationwide rackets, like narcotics, worth $50 billion a year on the streets of America. Pornography, the film Deep Throat, financed and distributed by the Mafia and its associates, has earned $100 million. Big city vice earns millions more. And prostitution. All the illegal goods and services the public demands, the Mafia supplies. In poor neighborhoods like this, the Mafia makes even more money by lending out its criminal profits at high rates of interest. The rates are extortionate, and many borrowers can never pay off their debts. Yet the Mafia's Shylocks, or loan sharks, are never short of customers. That recommendation you could do without. For Mafia loan sharks, holding court in their social clubs and bars, do not behave like normal bank managers. A borrower has to pay interest on his loan every week. If he defaults, he's in bad trouble. Fear of violence is what makes everybody pay.
Nasty attitude. Can you believe that? I can't believe it. 3 years.
3 years.
How much money is that?
That's $2,600 a year. On a $500
$500 loan.
The crime families lend much of their money to hard-working businessmen. When they can't pay back, the loan sharks don't beat them up or kill them. They just take over the businesses, forcing the owners to work for them. The Mafia casts its shadow over a huge legitimate empire. The families hang out in every kind of business, from restaurants to supermarkets, from slot machine firms to bowling alleys. They don't just use them to make money. On city streets like these, every mobster needs a respectable job as a front for his criminal activities and to explain his wealth to the taxman. Joe Colombo was a crime family boss. He had a respectable job. In the 1960s, Joey Cantalupo and his father Anthony worked with Colombo in a real estate firm, Cantalupo Realty. The premises in Brooklyn were both a legitimate business and a hive of Mafia activity. In Chicago, the carpet is rolled out for a high-class wedding reception. The instrument cases are carried by real musicians and contain real instruments. One of the first to arrive is the bride. She should be happy, for she's snapped up quite a catch. The bridegroom's father is one of the bosses of the Chicago crime family, James Turk Torello. Outwardly a respectable businessman, Torello's a Mafia loan shark, torturer, and murderer. One of the honored guests is Joe Arnold. For years he ran a shirt company while operating as a mob loan shark and vice boss. This is Jimmy Inandino, another loan shark with a reputation for violence. Chucky English, a soldier in the Chicago outfit, runs record, jukebox, and vending machine companies. Some wedding guests prefer to read the headlines rather than make them, but Chicago's joint crime boss, Joey Aiuppa, isn't so shy. He's a prominent businessman involved in advertising and taxi firms. Mafia Captain Joe Ferriola, reported to be another loan shark, controls a legitimate chain of dry cleaners. The Mafia owns so many businesses, it can take care of you from the cradle to the grave.
You go into the funeral parlor business. We had a funeral parlor. I was involved in me, Colombo, the Gambino. Not only do we have the funeral parlor business, we're involved with the people who sell the caskets. Every business.
Joey Cantalupo's best friend in the Mafia was Mike Bellino, a member of the Colombo crime family.
Mike Bellino and the Persicos invested X amount of dollars with a baker, which is a very good bakery. They make a lot of money.
The present head of the Gambino crime family, Paul Castellano, is alleged to have been New York's biggest meat wholesaler for 30 years.
They have what they call independent meat markets, which is just a branch of Castellano's. Castellano goes and has all these meat markets, and they have a place called Rambar.
Much of the mafia's illegal money has gone into New York's biggest business, garments. 250,000 people work in the city's clothing industry. It's a business worth $14 billion a year. The people who own the trucking companies in the garment center control the industry. Nothing moves without their consent. Trucks bring materials into the center and deliver the finished goods to stores across the nation. That's why the mafia has moved in on the trucking industry in the garment center.
The garment industry in New York is primarily run today by the Italian organized crime families in New York. Each one have various interests in this big, vast industry. Actually, all the Gambino boys.
The big power in garments today is Tommy Gambino, son of the late Carlo Gambino, the mafia's boss of bosses. But this Gambino shows up on none of the mafia family charts compiled by the police. He claims he's a legitimate businessman. He and his relatives own dozens of garment companies and trucking firms which dominate the entire industry. Tommy Gambino may not be in the mob, but state investigations show that many of his associates are. These fashion models and designers have little idea that whenever Americans buy clothes labeled Made in New York, they may be paying money to organized crime. The Gambinos and their associates have the edge in the garment business. Their competitors won't steal their customers, their friends run the unions, and their workers are unlikely to give them any trouble. Tommy Gambino jointly owns the biggest trucking company in the garment center, Consolidated Carriers. A state senator's investigation has alleged that Consolidated and a few other companies dictate whose trucks service which firms. One designer recalls the trouble he had in the past with one of his former truckers.
Of doing business, of course, are, part of my life, and we're competitive, and it's part of everybody. Nobody gets a break, so it's a tax that's levied by this organization that is more efficient than the United States government because they collect the taxes from everybody.
This other government doesn't stop at taxing what Americans wear. It also taxes what they throw away. In the throwaway society, rubbish collection and dumping is big business, worth $120 million in New York City alone. According to police sources, much of the garbage industry in New York and New Jersey is controlled by clubs of trucking company owners. The clubs fix prices and decide who gets which contracts. They are really nothing more than mafia fronts. Where there's muck, there's money. And where there's money, there's the mob. When people are told the mafia monopolizes the garbage business in their neighborhood, some respond with fear, few with surprise.
The mafia knows that that's been going on for years. This isn't something new. They just discovered something that's been existing for 25 to 35 years. Everybody knows that.
I don't know who picks it up, but I wish it wasn't by the mafia. That's all I can say.
Why is that?
Why? Because they're a gangster organization.
Well, as long as they keep it clean, that's all I can tell you. I don't care who picks it up.
I definitely don't think it's picked up by the mafia. Why not? Because I don't think the mafia has anything to do with it.
Would you care? I mean, truthfully, would you care? You want to live, right? So you live. And don't mind your own business, that's all.
In 1977, the FBI learned that garbage collection in New York's Bronx was monopolized by a company called P&S Sanitation. It was so powerful that no other firms dared compete with it. But P&S did get competition when the FBI set up its own garbage firm and touted for business from dozens of captive P&S customers. Operating from this building, FBI men proved P&S used violence to shut out its rivals. The firm's two bosses, seen here on either side of their lawyer, belonged to the Gambino crime family. Both were jailed for extortion. According to testimony before Congress, New Jersey's garbage industry is also run by the mafia, as one outsider found out when he tried to compete.
How does it work? I mean, do you have to pay people off to get work, or do you have to be friends with certain people?
Well, you pay dues to the association, and it was like a select few in there that were more or less organized. Circle of friends.
Mafia companies have been shown to control the garbage collection for millions of New Jersey citizens and thousands of businesses. By wiping out all competition, they can grossly inflate their prices. Even the dump sites are owned by the mob.
There have been three murders in this state in recent years.
All to do with the garbage industry.
I don't think it had anything to do with the way they were combing their hair.
The Westchester Premier Theatre in New York State. It opened in 1975 and collapsed 3 years later, bankrupted by mafia fraudsters who walked off with $9 million. Rehearsals with Lena Horne and the comedian Alan King. The idea of the theatre was that New York suburbanites would pay top prices to see top performers who could normally only be seen at big city venues or in Las Vegas casinos. Old Blue Eyes himself, Frank Sinatra, made 3 week-long appearances at the theatre, where he was photographed backstage with mafia bosses, although the singer later claimed he didn't know who they were. The crime bosses were stealing the takings and giving out free tickets and dinners to other gangsters. The handouts staggered stage manager Jerry Donnellan.
Well, in terms of things that were comped, tickets, dinners, drinks, whatever. Dinners, I would say at times 30% of the dinners in the dining room were comped or on the arm or whatever. From your best finishing school, can we put it that way?
The mafia sold Westchester shares at an inflated price, while at the same time stealing the theatre's profits. $9 million disappeared into the pockets of the Gambino and Genovese crime families. They also used the theatre as a front for other rackets.
Mr. Joseph Colombo, Sr.
Joe Colombo, real estate broker, mafia boss, and one of the biggest con men in the history of organized crime. Colombo founded the Italian-American Civil Rights League to hoodwink all Americans into believing the mafia did not exist. Colombo played on the feelings of Italian Americans who felt tainted by the mafia image and discriminated against by the American government.
The president is knocking us down, the vice president. The attorney general hates our guts. And I don't care who hears it, who knows it, who's here tonight and is ashamed to hear it. Know one thing. They're prejudiced against the Italian Americans. There's a conspiracy in this country against you, the people. Don't.
Joe Colombo used all the tricks of a politician he had himself founded. To the FBI, the man of the year was the same gang boss they had been trying to jail for a decade. It was the FBI's investigations which provoked Colombo into founding the Civil Rights League in the first place. In 1970, it mushroomed into 100,000 people gathered in New York's Columbus Circle. Under the statue of the Italian who had discovered America, Colombo appealed to Italian Americans to fight the stigma of organized crime.
And now he reached out to all his people. Not only his people, but all the other members of organized crime family. It was a wonderful idea. And then we used to picket the FBI building and harass. They were harassing us, now we're gonna harass them. We're gonna go with 10,000 people and walk around the FBI building all night long, just to show them that we're powerful.
The FBI had led the fight against the Mafia ever since Joe Valachi turned informer. The League claimed the Mafia was a fantasy.
You don't feel it's right.
You said you felt that there is a conspiracy against you. Do you think that
There's a conspiracy in this country. We've been saying this, we'll continue to say it, and it's only till it touches them. Now I'll go a little further. Many of the other minority groups are starting to feel this thing. And when they get through with us, they have to go on to the next body of people. And this is where the public should wake up, and this is where the public should start demanding some of these things be brought out to light. And why are they so frightened of an investigation? And why shouldn't there be an investigation on them? And who are they? Are they any better than you, I, or anybody else standing in this crowd?
To keep money and members flowing into the League, the gangsters in Colombo's crime family toured Italian neighborhoods and rallied people around the flag. Colombo declared Unity Days to show the strength of his Civil Rights League. To ensure maximum attendance at these rallies, Colombo made sure Italian shops closed down for the day. Going against Mafia tradition, Colombo courted publicity.
The man let the power go to his head. Unfortunately, he saw all these tens of thousands of people out there looking at him. They weren't looking at the leader, they were looking at him.
Colombo's campaign slogan was Numero Uno. Italian Americans should unite and become one. But the publicity he was attracting alarmed the men who led New York's other crime families.
Step down, go in the background. And Joey says, no, I want this. This is my baby.
At the 1971 rally, Colombo was shot in the head as he was preparing to speak. Seconds after Colombo had been shot, the man who had shot him was himself dead, killed instantly by one of Colombo's bodyguards. Colombo was not dead, but part of his brain had been blown away. At the hospital, supporters mounted a vigil for their fallen leader. Among the visitors to Colombo's bedside was the boss of bosses himself, Carlo Gambino. True to the Mafia code of silence, the man who had told Colombo to step down from the League had nothing to say. Colombo survived for 7 years, but never recovered. He died in 1978 when he was given a spectacular funeral in the grand old Mafia tradition. The Civil Rights League, which Joe Colombo had founded, was dead too. A cruel fraud on the Italian-American people. Newark, New Jersey. Most of its inhabitants are black and Hispanic, suffering from the highest levels of unemployment and poverty in the USA. Newark is a city that is falling apart. Detectives serving in the County Narcotics Squad have had a tip-off. They're working with Paddy Carr, a veteran Newark policeman. The operation is all too familiar, busting drug dealers in a city where drug dealing is now the main industry.
That's all right, we'll be enough. All right? I'll be right behind you.
Thousands of people are arrested in Newark every year on drugs charges. Today's arrest, a Hispanic suspected of selling cocaine to an undercover cop.
Listen to me? You understand English, okay? We're police officers. Man, you're under arrest. You're selling drugs to an undercover officer. Hand behind you. Put the cigarette down. Hands together. What are you doing here, my man? What are you doing here? I was picking my friend over here. He worked with picking your friend up. Put them together. Stand. Mike, get him in the car. Man, listen up, okay? Understand, you repeat it to him in Spanish. You have a right to remain silent, okay? Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. Okay? You understand that, all right? You have a right to talk to an attorney, okay? If you can't afford one will be appointed to you by the court. All right? You understand your rights. My man, come here.
Despite the massive growth in drug traffic, the narcotics squad has only half the men it needs. Newark hasn't got the money to fight an epidemic that has engulfed the city with 10,000 drug addicts.
Right in here. Understand me. I want to know where the rest of the shit is. Tell me where the shit is now, and I'll cut your play. If not, I'm going to put you up for next week. You're going to spend in jail. You understand me? Want to see what these guys carry? Yeah. It's their self-defense weapon. Kill somebody with that thing. What do you want to do? Where do you live?
3627.
Where?
3627.
Where?
Helmet.
I asked you where you
The narcotics squad has been overwhelmed by the drug explosion that has hit America. The city is now almost impossible to police, and yet only 25 years ago, Newark was a boom town with a great future.
It was a thriving business community, and
Newark's decline began in the 1960s when the Mafia went into partnership with the city's politicians. The Mafia also controlled the city's crime to the exclusion of every other race.
Not only were legitimate avenues blocked, revolution or disorder.
In 1967, Newark went up in flames. It was one of the first big civil riots in modern American history. The National Guard and the rioters battled it out on the streets for 4 days. 26 people were killed and 1,000 were injured. Arsonists and looters caused $10 million in damage. The city itself has never recovered. 1,000 blacks were arrested, and race relations in Newark were damaged beyond repair.
Well, there was a terrible riot in Newark. It was one of the first ones, and it was a frightening spectacle because suddenly a major city was in flames. You're walking the street, gunfire would break out. You actually had tanks coming down the street, price tag on it.
The man who wrote out that price tag was Hugh Addonizio, the mayor of Newark. Addonizio was elected mayor in 1962. For the next 8 years, he demanded a 10% kickback from companies wanting major contracts from the city. Addonizio's master was the local mafia boss, Ruggiero Boiardo, an old-time capo in the Genovese crime family with a murderous reputation. The mayor denied he was the mafia's puppet.
It's been said that you are not really the mayor of Newark, that, as you know, and that Boiardo is actually the mayor. What about it?
Well, of course, I disagree very strongly with that. I was the one that was elected. I've been conducting the business of the city of Newark for 8 years. It's absolutely false. There's no iota of truth to it.
You going to continue to fight this charge against you, Mr. Mayor?
Positively. There's no question about it. I'm going to fight because I'm innocent.
Everybody said that corruption was a, quote, way of life, that you couldn't work unless you paid back 10% for an illegitimate purpose.
As a result of Stern's investigation, Addonizio was charged with extortion and corruption.
I expect to be exonerated. In the meantime, I'm returning to City Hall to continue to run a very effective and efficient administration. This is a very difficult city to administer, and we're certainly trying to do the job here and solve the problems. Now, other than that, I have no further comment.
It was all bluster. Addonizio was destroyed in court by Herb Stern, who exposed the corrupt regime that had looted City Hall. In 1970, Addonizio was convicted and jailed for 10 years. He was to die in prison. Since his day, Newark, the city that the mafia and corrupt politicians defrauded and destroyed, has sunk deeper and deeper into despair.
That's the end of this video. Hopefully I made your day just a little better. And I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Later.